Welcome to Era's Tale. Find a comfortable place, let your shoulders soften, and allow your breath to gently slow down. Let the day fade away. Let your mind soften. Your journey begins now. Once upon a time, in a small cottage at the edge of a sleepy village, there lived a boy named Anthony with his grandmother. The cottage had a red door, ivy climbing up its walls, and a garden that seemed to bloom in every season. Anthony's grandmother was a gentle woman with silver hair she wore in a long braid, and hands that always smelled faintly of lavender and bread dough. Every evening, as the sun began to set, grandmother would sit in her rocking chair by the window, knitting soft blankets while Anthony did his homework at the kitchen table. The cottage was always filled with warmth, from the wood stove in winter, from the open windows in summer, and always from the love that lived within its walls. Anthony had lived with his grandmother for as long as he could remember. She had taught him how to tie his shoes, how to read the old books on her shelves, and how to listen to the language of the garden. For grandmother believed that gardens could speak, if only you knew how to listen. One particular autumn evening, when the leaves were turning golden crimson, and the air had that special crispness that makes you want to wear your coziest sweater, Anthony noticed something unusual. He was helping his grandmother gather the last of the tomatoes before the first frost, when he saw that the old apple tree at the back of the garden was glowing. "Grandmother," he said softly, tugging on her cardigan sleeve. "The apple tree is shining." His grandmother straightened up slowly, her hand on her back the way she always did after bending over the vegetable beds. She looked toward the tree and smiled, a knowing smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Ah," she said, as if she'd been expecting this. "So it's time, is it?" "Time for what?" Anthony asked, his curiosity blooming like one of grandmother's morning glories. "Time for me to tell you about the Starkeeper," she said, taking his hand in her soft, weathered one. "Come, let's sit on the bench, and I'll tell you a story I learned from my grandmother, who learned it from hers." They walked together to the wooden bench beneath the apple tree. The glow was subtle now. Anthony wondered if he'd imagined it, but there was definitely something special about the way the last rays of sunlight caught in the leaves, making them shimmer like golden coins. Grandmother settled onto the bench with a contented sigh, and Anthony snuggled close to her side. She smelled like rosemary and vanilla, and her arm around him felt like the safest place in all the world. "Long, long ago," grandmother began, her voice taking on that special storytelling quality that made everything feel both real and magical. "Before your great-great-great-grandmother was even born, there was a man who lived in this very cottage. His name was Elias, and he was known throughout the land as the Starkeeper." "What's a Starkeeper?" Anthony asked. "Patience, my dear," grandmother said with a gentle laugh. "That's what the story is about. Now, Elias was a gardener, just as I am, just as you're learning to be. But Elias had discovered something remarkable. He had learned that every living thing, every flower, every tree, every blade of grass, was connected to a star in the sky." Anthony looked up through the branches of the apple tree. The first stars of evening were just beginning to appear, tiny pinpricks of light against the deepening blue. "Connected how?" he wondered aloud. "Well," grandmother continued, "Elias discovered that when you plant a seed with love, when you tend it with care, when you sing to it and water it and protect it from harsh winds, something magical happens. The plant grows strong and beautiful, and somewhere in the heavens, a star grows brighter. Like watering a star from the ground? Antony asked. Exactly like that, grandmother said, pleased. Elias spent his whole life tending the most beautiful garden anyone had ever seen. Roses that bloomed in colors that had no names. Vegetables so delicious that people came from distant villages just to taste them. And trees, oh, the trees were magnificent. This very apple tree we're sitting under was planted by Elias himself, more than 200 years ago. Antony looked up at the thick trunk, at the strong branches spreading above them like protective arms. 200 years old. It was hard to imagine. Every evening, grandmother went on, Elias would walk through his garden, and he would look up at the stars, and he could see his whole life's work shining back at him. Each plant he had loved was a star he had brightened. And the garden loved him back. It gave him apples even in the coldest winters. It gave him roses that never wilted. It gave him peace and purpose. What happened to him? Antony asked, though part of him didn't want the story to end. Well, Elias grew old, as all people do. And one autumn evening, much like this one, he sat beneath this apple tree and looked up at the stars. He saw the whole sky blazing with light, all the stars he had helped to shine, and he felt content. He closed his eyes for the last time, and as he did, something wonderful happened. Grandmother paused, and in that pause, a soft breeze rustled through the garden, carrying the scent of earth and apples and distant rain. What happened? Antony whispered. Every plant in the garden, every single one, bloomed at once. Even the ones that should have been sleeping for winter. Even the apple tree, which had already given its fruit for the year, suddenly blossomed with flowers, thousands of white and pink petals that glowed in the moonlight. And if you knew where to look, if you looked up at just the right moment, you could see one star in the sky shining brighter than all the rest. That was Elias's star. His own star. Everyone gets their own star? Antony asked. Everyone who tends the garden of their life with love, grandmother said. You see, Antony, the garden isn't just about plants. It's about everything we do with care and kindness. Every time you help someone, every time you create something beautiful, every time you're gentle with the world, you're tending a garden, and you're making your star shine brighter. Antony thought about this, watching as more stars appeared in the darkening sky. Is that why you teach me to be kind to the plants? And to be patient? And to always say please and thank you? Yes, my dear one, grandmother said, kissing the top of his head. That's exactly why. We're all star keepers, in our own way. We're all tending gardens and brightening stars. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the night deepen around them. The garden seemed to hum with life, crickets chirping, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl beginning its nightly rounds. Grandmother? Antony said after a while. Do you think Elias is still here somehow? In the garden? Grandmother was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was soft. I think places hold memories, Anthony. I think the love we pour into the earth doesn't just disappear. It stays. It grows. This garden has been loved for 200 years, by Elias, by all the gardeners who came after him, by me, and now by you. All that love is still here. Can you feel it? Anthony closed his eyes and breathed deeply. He could feel it, a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature, a sense of being held and cherished, as if the garden itself was a living embrace. I can feel it, he said. It feels like home. That's exactly what it is, grandmother said. Home isn't just a building, you know. It's the love that fills it. It's the care we take with each day. It's the garden we tend, whether that garden has flowers or not. As the stars grew brighter, grandmother began to point out the constellations. See there? That's Orion the Hunter. And there's the Big Dipper. Your grandfather used to say he could see the pattern of our garden written in the stars. There's the spot where we planted the roses. There's the vegetable patch. There's the apple tree. Is grandfather a star now? Anthony asked, thinking of the grandfather he had never met but heard so many stories about. One of the brightest, grandmother said with certainty. He tended this garden with such love. Every morning, he would come out and greet each plant by name. Can you imagine? He had names for all of them. The rose bush by the gate was called Margaret. The old oak tree was Samuel. This apple tree was, and still is, called Sophia. Hello, Sophia, Anthony said, patting the trunk of the tree. A breeze rustled through the leaves, almost like an answer. You see? Grandmother said with a smile. She knows her name. As the evening deepened into true night, grandmother told Anthony more stories. She told him about the time a hummingbird had made its nest in the rose bush and how they had watched the tiny eggs hatch into even tinier birds. She told him about the year the pumpkins grew so large that they won a blue ribbon at the village fair. She told him about the morning she had found a deer and her fawn sleeping beneath Sophia the apple tree, and how she had quietly left them some apples and watched them from the window. The garden is a place of miracles, grandmother said. Small miracles, perhaps, but miracles nonetheless. Every seed that sprouts, every flower that blooms, every fruit that ripens, it's all magic, Anthony. Real magic. Is that why you're always so happy when you're gardening? Anthony asked. Yes, grandmother said simply. When I'm in the garden, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. And that's a wonderful feeling. I hope you'll always have something in your life that makes you feel that way, whether it's gardening or painting or writing or building or any of the 1,000 other ways to tend a garden and brighten a star. The moon had risen now, full and bright, casting silver shadows across the garden. Everything looked different at night, Anthony thought. Mysterious and beautiful and somehow more real than in daylight. I think I'd like to be a starkeeper too, Anthony said. Like Elias. Like you. You already are, my dear, grandmother said. Every day that you live with kindness and care, you're a starkeeper. Every time you water a plant or read a book or help me with the dishes or smile at someone who needs a smile, you're keeping stars. You're making the world brighter. Even small things? Anthony asked. Especially small things, grandmother assured him. The world is changed by small things done with great love. A garden isn't grown in a day, after all. It's the patient work of many days, many seasons. One seed, one flower, one star at a time. They sat together under Sophia the apple tree, wrapped in the warmth of a shared blanket grandmother had brought from the house. The night was full of sounds, a symphony of crickets and frogs, the whisper of wind through leaves, the distant sound of the village clock tower striking 9. "When I grow up," Anthony said sleepily, leaning more heavily against his grandmother, "I want to take care of this garden forever. I want to make sure Sophia always has enough water, and the roses always have nice soil, and the vegetables grow big and delicious." "That would make me very happy," grandmother said, and Anthony could hear the smile in her voice. "This garden has been waiting for you, you know. Every garden needs a new Starkeeper eventually. Someone young and strong with many years ahead to love it." "And you'll teach me everything?" Anthony asked. "All the secrets?" "Every single one," grandmother promised. "How to listen to what the plants need. How to know when to water and when to wait. How to encourage a shy seedling and how to prune back something that's grown too wild. How to read the sky for rain and the leaves for health. How to make compost that's rich and dark and perfect. All of it, I'll teach you." Anthony felt a warm contentment spreading through him, as if he himself were a plant soaking up sunshine. This was his place. This garden, this cottage, this life with his grandmother, this was where he belonged. "Look," grandmother whispered suddenly, pointing up through the branches. Anthony looked and gasped. A shooting star was streaking across the sky, leaving a trail of light behind it. "Make a wish," grandmother said. Anthony closed his eyes. He wished for many things, for more evenings like this, for grandmother to always be healthy and happy, for the garden to flourish, for him to become a good Starkeeper. But most of all, he wished for this moment to last, this perfect moment of peace and love and belonging. When he opened his eyes, the shooting star was gone, but the sky was full of its siblings, countless stars shining down on them. "Do you know what I think?" grandmother said softly. "I think that shooting star was Elias, checking on his garden, making sure it's still loved." "What do you think he'd say?" Anthony asked. "I think he'd be very pleased," grandmother said. "I think he'd see how the apple tree still stands strong, how the roses still bloom, how the soil is still rich and well tended. And I think he'd be especially pleased to see a young Starkeeper sitting beneath Sophia, learning the old ways, getting ready to carry them forward." They stayed outside a while longer, counting stars and making up stories about constellations they invented. There was the garden spade, and the watering can, and the great compost heap, all supposedly placed in the sky by ancient Starkeepers to help them remember what was important. Finally, when Anthony's yawns grew too frequent to ignore, grandmother stood and held out her hand. "Come, my dear Starkeeper," she said. "Even those who tend the stars need their rest. Tomorrow is another day for growing and learning and brightening the sky." They walked hand in hand back to the cottage, leaving the garden to its nighttime business. Inside, the cottage was warm and cozy. Grandmother made them both cups of chamomile tea with honey, and they sat at the kitchen table, sipping slowly and saying nothing, just enjoying the comfortable silence that comes from perfect understanding. Before bed, Anthony looked out his bedroom window at the garden. In the moonlight, he could almost see it glowing, not just the apple tree, but all of it. Every plant, every stone, every inch of earth seemed to shimmer with the love that had been poured into it for 200 years. Good night, garden, he whispered. Good night, Sophia. Good night, Margaret. Good night, Samuel. And as he drifted off to sleep, Anthony could have sworn he heard the garden whisper back. Good night, young Starkeeper. Grow well. Shine bright. His dreams that night were full of gardens that reached up to touch the stars, and stars that bent down to kiss the flowers, and himself, walking through it all, a starkeeper like Elias, like his grandmother, tending his garden and brightening the sky, one small act of love at a time. And high above, watching over the cottage and its sleeping inhabitants, the stars shone a little brighter, as they always do over places where love and care have taken root and grown deep. This journey is ending, but your dreams are just beginning. Good night, from Era's Tale. Sleep deeply. Dream softly. Rest completely.